Hi everyone, this is Dr. Mike, host of the free iTunes podcast, Psychiatric Secrets Revealed with Dr. Mike, but that's not why I'm here today. This is another Saving Savvy episode, and in this episode I'm going to offer my opinion why big companies tend to fail or start to do poorly. I'm talking about companies like Nikon, we've heard them in the news lately. Other companies too, that Sony sometimes isn't doing as well as it could, and there's always the ups and downs of the big tech companies like Apple and Microsoft, companies like GoPro, etc., etc., etc. So why are these companies that were so cutting edge at one point, why are they showing problems now? Well, one, I think, is their own ignorance. Sometimes they're so convinced that they are the best or that they have the best products that they don't really see the forest for the trees. Now, when I was a medical director in the 1990s at a hospital, another hospital was being built in an adjacent suburb. Obviously, that would be a newer hospital with newer facilities, and I know as a medical director going to the executive committee, saying to them, we need to upgrade, we need to remodel, we need to change programs, and the executive committee pretty much said, nah, we've been around for 75 years, we're going to be around. And indeed, they are still around, but the newer hospital captured all the top patients, the ones with the best insurance, the best payer mix. That's what makes a hospital thrive. And the old hospital, which I'm no longer part of, really didn't do that. And they're serving a wonderful purpose. They're just doing it on a shoestring. So sometimes our ignorance that based on our history can really falter a company. What about quick profits? Well, especially if you're a stock owner owned company, if you're a public company, there's this push to have quick profits. And the way that you do that, of course, is that you increase profits in and you decrease spending out, right? Or, well, you know what I mean. You spend less and you make more. And one way to do that is to limit your R&D and to limit your innovation. So it's much easier to change a button on a camera or to put in a little more software on a microprocessor and call it a new microprocessor, or do things like that that really don't make that tremendous amount of a difference, and then tout it. Get on YouTube, have people get on that on their channels and say, oh, this is the greatest thing, or you're getting another 1/80th of a stop more ISO performance or something, and oh, we all go crazy and we want to buy those cameras. But you're really looking at microscopic changes, and eventually people say, I had this model and I had this model, there wasn't that much of a difference, maybe I need to move on to a different brand. Sometimes you don't fix your problems. So we certainly saw that with Nikon. We saw that with the shutter problems on the D600 series and several other cameras. We saw that with the overheating flash with the SB900. And instead of immediately going out and addressing those problems, what they did was they basically wanted you to buy a newer model. Now, of course, I know they did eventually fix the shutter on the D600 cameras, but that was really because of legal pressure. So it doesn't really build a lot of customer loyalty. You look at other companies like Fuji, which will offer these fantastic firmware updates that basically change their cameras. That builds customer loyalty. Arrogance is another problem. So people, again, can believe so much that they are the big dog in town, that everyone else is nothing. We saw that, I think, with Microsoft and when the iPhone came out. And I'm pretty sure this was Steve Ballmer. You could tell me below if I'm wrong, but I believed he said, who would want a phone without a real keypad? Who would want to touch a screen for a keypad? Well, apparently everyone, because I can't think of a single phone now that has an actual mechanical keypad on it. I'm sure they're out there, but they are few and far between. But that arrogance and that lack of vision really, I think, can cost your company quite a bit. Companies often want to milk their cash cows too. So that goes with technological companies of all sorts, but we see that a lot with software. Again, to look at Microsoft, you look at the Microsoft Office series. Well, I had a copy of Microsoft Office 2000, and I don't use it now because I use a Mac, but I used that copy for many, many, many years, and if I had to use it even today, it would perfectly suit my needs. So there have been many versions, this is 2017 now, there have been many versions of Microsoft Office and Microsoft Word since then. But the features they added were features that I didn't need. I don't really care if I have a fancy ribbon on top or if it does some other sort of function that I'll never use. So sometimes by reintroducing these products over and over again with these little changes, and I guess they have to be kind of small because what are you going to do? You kind of build a dissatisfaction among customers, and they are happy to migrate elsewhere, as we saw with Google Docs. So a lot of people just use free software now, does the job, and they don't feel that pressure to now get a subscription every year for their Microsoft Office. Kind of keep that cash cow going. Companies sometimes think they own the market. We see this with many companies. We saw this with Nikon and Canon, where they really felt that they had the enthusiast and semi-professional and professional market because they really had the DSLRs. But they didn't look past the, couldn't see the forest for the trees because they didn't realize that other innovators were coming out with compelling ideas that initially maybe couldn't perform as well as the DSLRs, but they're quickly catching up. Those mirrorless cameras offer many functions that exceed a DSLR, and people are moving in that direction. The other thing is that companies are kind of bound once they develop a product. So if you had an iPhone with a completely different operating system, you wouldn't like it. It would drive you crazy. Think about what Microsoft did when they introduced, I think it was Windows 8 without the start button. People were crazy. They hated it. So once you're bound into a certain system, you kind of have to stick with it and make changes. Now that doesn't mean that you can't be innovative and introduce really smart changes, but what it does mean is that you can't go too far afield. I think Pentax tried that with some of their earlier cameras when they're trying to kind of break back into the market, and they would have some non-camera designer design a camera that didn't function very well, or they came out, I actually have some of these cameras by the way, with all these color combinations that you could come up with and design your own camera. I thought that was an incredibly cool and fun idea, but it wasn't enough to get people to switch over because it just didn't offer that much. I'm on my back page now. I think the other thing that really hampers these cameras is the understudy in the wings. So if you have a product that's well established, it's very hard to break into that product unless the new person on the block offers something radically different and compelling. So in DSLRs, it's the mirrorless camera. With the, with Canon and companies like Canon and Nikon pushed is they wanted you to go up to bigger size sensors. Well, companies like Panasonic and Olympus said, well, let's use a slightly smaller sensor. We'll have smaller lenses. We'll have smaller cameras. And it resonated with a lot of people because the picture quality is excellent, maybe not as good, but good enough. And that's the other thing that I think we know as photographers, that yes, if you look on a microscopic level, you can see differences between different cameras, but the similarities are greater than the differences. So we can't just constantly go up a little notch and say we want to buy that next camera. So I'm thinking you look at something like, well, I'll get into that when I get into that whole part. So you have to be different. So you have to offer a compelling alternative product. Here's probably the most compelling alternative product for a camera, your smartphone, right? Because it's completely different. It rethinks the whole idea of photography, and it works well enough. Maybe not as good as your DSLR, but well enough. You also, if you are big enough, you can do things. So Google could introduce free software. They're going to give you the Google Office series, which has docs and I think has slides and spreads. And in fact, my kids all received, when they entered high school, a Chromebook as just part of their package. And that Chromebook, they do all their work in Google Docs. They do all of their science analysis in Google Sheets, I think it is their spreadsheet program. They do their presentations in Google Slides. These programs are not quite as sophisticated as Office, but they're sophisticated enough. And so what do you think is going to happen when they need to go off to college? Well, they're completely comfortable with that software. It's adequate for their needs. Those computers are dirt cheap because the processing power is in the cloud. They're going to go in that direction, not in the direction of buying a $400 or $500 office suite or renting one for $100 a year and all of that entails, and getting an expensive computer and all that. So if you think differently, you can break into the market, and that of course hampers companies like Nikon and Canon and Sony. Well, Sony's being very innovative, but let's say Nikon and Canon, because they have to stay within their market. We also saw that, by the way, with Microsoft. So I was a WordPerfect user, and when WordPerfect went from a DOS-based program to a Windows-based program, it was much buggier than the competing Word. Now, who knows why, but I'm assuming that Word had an advantage being a Microsoft product, so when Windows would upgrade, they maybe got a little bit of a head start on working out all the little bugs and things more than a product like WordPerfect did. I also remember that you would pretty much get Word for free, just like you'd get Microsoft Explorer for free. These big companies can do that. And what would happen, of course, is that why would you buy WordPerfect when you could get a free program? Of course, Google's doing that to Microsoft now, so it kind of goes around, comes around. So what can companies do? Well, I think one thing is to keep prices fair. You're seeing this unfortunate trend in these companies where they're introducing these highly premium products, but at a very premium price. I mean, the Apple MacBook Pro is a great example of a product that is way overpriced for what you're getting. Wonderful product, way overpriced though. You see that with cameras now, where a lot of times you're being pushed towards these $2,000 Micro Four Thirds cameras. Now, are they awesome cameras? Well, of course they are. But most people don't need that. They need maybe the $1,000 camera or the $800 camera or maybe even the $600 camera. That needs to be out there. And it's better to make a little bit of profit many times than it is to make a lot of profit just a couple times. Just ask Walmart. You also have to keep a certain familiarity. And I think but familiarity does not mean lack of innovation. So if I'm familiar with a Nikon camera, I can jump to any other camera. Now, here's a mistake that I think Nikon made. I bought this camera. This is a Nikon DL. It was their designery kind of retro camera with a lot of dials and things. And when I got this camera, I thought this is going to be so cool. But I'll tell you something. It's just not fun to shoot with. I would actually rather shoot with just one of my old Nikon DSLRs, or I'd much rather shoot, if I want to go the manual route, which I do like quite a bit, with like a Fuji camera, where for whatever reason the Fujis are fun to shoot with. This one is not. So you have to keep a certain amount of familiarity. If you do make changes, you have to make sure those changes are changes that the customer wants or the customer can use. You want to have compatibility. So what's going to make me go from, let's say, a Nikon DSLR to a mirrorless camera and stay within the Nikon brand? Well, if I could use all my lenses, if I can use my flashes, if I can use my remotes and all those other different things. If I can use those things, I'm more likely to jump down and go to that product than I am to say, well, do I really want, maybe I want a Panasonic camera, or maybe I want an Olympus camera, or maybe I want one of those Sony cameras, and just completely sell everything and go with that new product line. Make it easier for me, company, and I'll make it easier for you. The other thing is they need to look at the entire field. So Nikon looks at Canon, Canon looks at Nikon. They don't look much further than that because of that arrogance and all of that sort of stuff. So they need to not only look at like Nikon, they need to look at Pentax. They need to look at the Sony camera, the full size camera line. They need to look at the mirrorless cameras. They need to look at the other really popular devices and say, why are these so popular? And then they need to create products that address all of those issues, not just, well, Canon did this, so we're going to do this next, or Nikon did this, so we're going to do this next. They have to realize that things change. So the DSLR design is what, from the 1920s or the 1930s, right? Well, maybe its day has come and gone, and the technologies are catching up now, so that we can have somewhat smaller cameras that have more capabilities, and you need to jump on the bandwagon, big companies, and realize that everything must change. And you need to add true innovation. So I don't necessarily think that giving me a 1/3200 thousandths or something of a second shutter speed is an incredible innovation, going to an electronic shutter. That's cool, I like it, I'll take it. But give me some true innovation. Where do we see true innovation? Companies like smartphones. So things like your touch screen came from your smartphone, right? Things like on my iPhone 7 Plus here can do a pretty respectable background defocus with this little tiny lens, right? This little tiny short focal length lens, but it looks pretty darn good. Why aren't we seeing that sort of innovation in companies that just make cameras? This should be where they're expert. And you should have true ease, especially with cameras. So even if I'm tethered somehow to my smartphone, I should be able to go to my camera, find a picture, post it immediately to Instagram or to Facebook or wherever I need to do. Put it, maybe have some few catchphrases that I could put in, maybe even a little keyboard. I don't know if I need that or not. But have something like that where I can easily do that and not have to go through multiple steps. Because if I have to go through multiple steps, I think for most people, they're going to say, well, I'm just going to use this. It's good enough. And I think the other thing that will make these companies survive in the long run is if they're big enough. So we look at companies like GoPro. GoPro is a smaller company. They had that failed drone, which I think that they're trying to reintroduce it again. But that drone might have been just enough to sink the company. Palm, if you remember Palm, the Palm personal digital assistants that also became phones. I had a Palm phone once. It was an awesome phone. But they just couldn't keep up with the bigger companies. And in fact, I think what sunk them was they tried to come up with this innovative dock where you plug your phone into a screen and keyboard, couldn't get past the R&D in it, and it pretty much folded the company. But if you're big enough, you can ride the storm. If you're a Microsoft, you can produce crummy operating software and eventually get it right. And in fact, you can out-innovate the innovators. So you look at Apple always being the innovator company in maybe the last decade or so with all of their different products. Look at something like a Surface Pro 4 now from Microsoft. That is a pretty cool product. I looked at one that my sister-in-law had at Christmas time, and he had a desire to buy it. I thought, I want this product, although I'm an Apple guy, right? I looked at the new Apple computer, which I think is a fine computer, and I think, gads, it's expensive.
Who, me?
Oh, this is talking now. I don't know if it's innovative or not. So anyways, those are some of my ideas, why these big companies are running into trouble. Also, things that they can do to get back into that black bottom line. I'm not claiming to be an expert, but I am a consumer, and this sort of makes sense. If you have different ideas or new ideas, put them in the comments below. Even better, make your own video. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. If you like my channel, which is very diverse, please subscribe. That would be awesome. Both things really make me want to make more videos. A couple other things. Listen to my free podcast. It has my wife and myself on it now, where we kind of talk about psychological issues. It's sort of fun. And we talk about current events, and we talk about our kids, and you name it. I also do an experimental writing blog called drmikekuna.com, all one drmikekuna.com. And that's just a blog that I started so I could express my feelings a little bit more. Just trying to break open my writing style a little bit, and to do that I need to be able to put my feelings in a public forum and not be too afraid to do that. So if you want to learn a little bit more about me, you can look at that blog. Take care, everyone. Have a great day. Bye.